No, you're fine.
Hey guys, Pete Renz here, HVAC Greatness, here with the HVAC millionaire, Kelley McKay. Kelley, how you doing today, buddy? Hey, the big
I'm
coach, the big
doing
time.
good. I'm doing good.
I'm
I'm ready to talk about. We got, we've talked for quite a while, Pete and I. We tend to do that before we press record a lot of times. And so, one of the things that came up, and I hear it come up all the time. I know Pete comes up against it as well, which is just not people not charging what they need to charge to just not just even just break even in their business, but actually losing money in their business because they're afraid to charge what they need to charge.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I
absolutely.
think that's a good subject to touch on, because I think that I don't think I know that I've talked to dozens and dozens of business owners, and I hear it all the time. And I know that um, oftentimes if I'm coaching somebody on this, it takes me a minute. It takes quite a bit of work to get somebody past this mindset that holds them back, because there's a level of guilt for
Yeah,
one thing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and I think I'm a bit of an authority on that, from the perspective of that used to be me.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that was me for like 5 years, man. So I get
yeah,
it.
and it was like I got used to the struggle and I'm barely making it. I'm growing, but I'm just, paying the bills. My credit lines are running longer and longer. And I go to a sales training class. I learn how to get my price up. I sell my first job with a 50% GP. I'm happy and guilty at the same time. And I carry, that feeling in your gut after something that, like, you get in a fight with somebody and you feel guilty for saying something, and it just like carries around with you for hours. I had that guilt for days. Like, I ripped the customer off, and I gave my high-end system. It was a
Yeah.
50% GP. My overhead was 30%, but I made a 20% net profit and felt guilty. Best I'd ever done at that time, at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah. For me, it was, it's either moving away from pain or towards pleasure. Well, I was
Yeah,
definitely trying to get away from pain.
yeah, yeah,
And when I finally learned, like, just of this topic of overhead, and I learned that, man, the customer actually pays for everything that the business does. You want better uniforms, you want a new truck, you want better tools, you need ladder rack, you want a van wrap, you
build it in
want
your pricing.
up your insurance. Customer pays for all that.
Build
You
it in
want
your
you want to
pricing.
provide better benefits to the people that work for you, or
Yeah,
benefits to yourself, or take a vacation once in a while. Guess who pays for that vacation? The customer. Customer pays for everything, and there's not a business that exists today where this is not the case. Everything that company does or provides for their employees, everything that they own as a business, that they purchase as a business for the business, is all purchased by customer money from
yes,
sales, from sales. And it doesn't even matter if you're a nonprofit. If you're a nonprofit and you still have to raise money and you're raising money for a cause. Well, who raises that money for that cause? Well, who supplies the money for the cause? It's the people that donate to you. Well, you have to sell them on, sometimes that's an easier sell than sometimes what we have to sell, when
yeah,
it comes to, because people can be emotional and compassionate and have empathy towards a certain cause like that, especially if one of their loved ones or themselves have been affected by it, where it's not so much in the heating and air conditioning industry if you're trying to sell a condenser. Um, but the reality remains that nothing happens until a sale is made. And so one of the things I always say is, like, think of a company like Target. So Target has these great big buildings, um, probably 20,000 square feet building, maybe more, especially the super Targets, they're probably even bigger. Well, who pays for the light bill and the heating and air conditioning bill and the lights in the parking lot and the employees' wages and the racks that they have to put up? Like, I mean, think POS, the point of sale systems that they use. Who pays for all of that? The customer pays for it. So if you've ever shopped at Target, you helped pay for the light bill that month. You helped pay for some of the employees' benefits. It wasn't the CEO of Target. Just as it's you being the CEO or president of your company, it's not you personally paying for those things. The customer pays for those things through sales you make. So for me, I think that that's an easy way to start looking at it, is that for one, you've got to make a decision. Am I getting the results that I want or I need to even stay in business? Yes or no? No? Like 90% of most businesses out there getting started who aren't in enough pain yet and feel too guilty to charge what they need to charge. The answer is no. Something has to change. Something's got to give. And it's either going to be you, because you're going to wind up broken, exhausted, and file bankruptcy on your business, possibly on your own house, because we invest our own lives into these things. Possibly cost you half in a divorce because you're never home, and you don't ever have money. Money is like the number one thing that couples fight about. And if you're in business for yourself and you're not providing enough money, do something about it. You can't keep doing what you're doing and keep getting what you're getting. And I know I'm kind of like talking at, man, I'm really passionate about this because I see it all the time. And it's just sad that you can't keep doing what you're doing and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity.
It is. However, my mind's running with you, bro. I'm so with you, and all these different examples and everything else. However, we got to cut to the core. Have you ever polled customers before? You start asking them these questions, you learn all about your customers. One of the things that was realized by the experts is when they polled customers what they preferred, what they thought about this, what they thought about that, they got some really useful data, but they also got a bunch of data that was useless, because what they realized was what the customers thought they wanted or thought they were doing and preferred was in total contradiction to what the actions that they took. And here's why. Logically, they think they want this, that, and the other, but people don't act on logic. People act on that gut feeling that comes from the subconscious mind, the emotional mind, and they act emotional. When you're in conflict with logic, you got to charge more. You're not making enough money. But something in your gut is holding you back. There's a conflict. And so ultimately, you can't help it unless you resolve the conflict. And that takes a little bit of work. And here's why. Your employees that fight with you, or they can't seem to sell because they don't want to be a salesperson, and they look at a part that costs $20 and wonder how in the world you can charge $350 and sleep at night. They don't get it because they have what's called consumer mindset. And that's just a subset. It's actually a specific type of consumer mindset. People like me who grew up with a single mom, we didn't have much money. I grew up in a household where we compared prices. I remember being in a mall with my teenage buddies, and we were at a store, and they were talking about whatever that product was. Let's say a pair of tennis shoes, certain pair of tennis shoes, and me thinking, well, it's cheaper over at the other store. And my buddies elbowing me. They were embarrassed. I thought nothing wrong with that because that's the way I was raised. We're looking for cheaper because it's all the same. Because we were on a very tight income. Somebody who's raised a little differently, they're really not worried about what's cheaper. They're looking at something else. And so depending on how you're raised, if we're mostly blue collar, right? We're not, coming out of college and going into HVAC usually, right? And with rich moms and dads and everything, maybe we have some good family members that are okay. And I'm not trying to state anything other than the way we were raised has a heavy influence on how we think today. And as business owners, until we resolve that at a deeper level, it's gonna haunt us. And there is a solution, and we ought to talk about that. Don't you agree?
There's everybody has a different money story. There's a great book by Morgan Housel called The Psychology of Money it's really a good read. It's interesting, really interesting, but entertaining. But he says, well, I think it's Dan Kennedy who says everybody has a different money story. They all um, heard different stories. What he says is listening from the top of the stairs, right? So like kids sneaking out of their bedroom at night and they hear their parents arguing, and they all heard different things, and they all grew up in different areas and had different circumstances as they were growing up that surrounded money.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody's different when it comes to this, but I do feel like HVAC is primarily a blue collar industry, and primarily, not all, primarily a lot of the people who work in the HVAC industry or get started in the HVAC industry are just from a blue collar family or middle class or lower middle class, maybe even lower, maybe lower class. I don't know. I'm just saying that, and I don't know if that's true or not. That's just my perception. My parents were middle class. Um,
Yeah. I don't
I've
think you're,
seen a lot of guys come and go, from my business, and got to know a lot of people, and that's what I saw. All the guys who came to work for me, they didn't come from rich families.
yeah, I don't think it's too much a stretch to call that a pretty much, 95%, if at a minimum,
Sure.
accurate statement.
Yeah.
I was raised poor. In fact, I remember, living with a single mom. And then one year I was going to go live with my dad, and I had to start with my grandparents. My grandfather was well-to-do. He was self-made, and some events came up from school. The teacher called and wanted to know why they wouldn't send me on the field trip. And my grandparents says, why didn't you tell us about it? And I said, well, it was a lot of money, because I'm filtering through, I'm damaged goods, mama,
Yeah.
this is what it shaped me, and it carried me forward. They said it was $100, but back then, it seemed like a lot of money because,
Yeah.
I'm a little older, but it seemed like a lot of money, and I was confused, and that's what happens, guys.
Yeah.
You're carrying this forward, and it's got to be resolved. Um,
It does.
doc,
I mean,
Dr. Phil. So
my parents said, money doesn't, they're like, money don't grow on trees. I heard that growing up. I did. Whatever the other sayings are, penny saved is a penny earned. Who do you think we are, the Rockefellers? I don't know if people
yeah,
still say that anymore, but there's a whole generation.
yeah, eat all the food on your plate. There's people in Africa starving. I
Oh
used to
yeah,
think,
I
I
heard
used to
that all
think,
the
well, why
time.
can't we
Yeah.
send them this? Because I,
Yeah, I heard that all the time when I
oh
was
yeah,
growing up.
yeah,
There are people in Africa. Yeah.
yeah. They call that, what do they call that? Um, Living from a position of scarcity. There's not enough. There's not
Right.
enough, and in reality, there's an abundance. Now, the other extreme of that, I know Kelley was telling me about. You can elaborate on this if you want, about a guy that was making a 35% net profit, but it wasn't enough. He wanted more, and we see these guys making more and more and more and more, and they're so aggressive. And I'm thinking, how can they sleep at night? Because when is enough enough? Right. So, you know, the either end of a spectrum is unhealthy generally, no matter what you're talking about. But what is it, somewhere in the middle, you know, what is the right thing to
Yeah.
do?
I think people get hung up on margins because would you rather have, 35% of $2 million, or that's too much. 35% of $1 million, or would you rather have, 25% of 2.5 million? And I haven't did the math in my head, but I know it's going to be more. It's going to be
Yeah.
way more dollars.
Yeah.
And so you get hung up on the margins, and as you grow and hire people to delegate some stuff. So if you want to wear all the hats, I think there's a lot of business owners also who look at that as a badge of honor,
Right.
to wear all these hats and to be busy all the time. It makes them feel important, I guess. And I think, and there's a need for that. Like we want to feel significant. That's one of the 6 basic human needs. But the problem with that is of course, as you know, you are one dimensional. If your business runs everything about your life. And I was one dimensional at one time
Sure.
for many years, like, because I always believed that the business was I didn't start saving money or investing. I didn't have a 401k or any of that stuff until I was, my late 30s. So I didn't have like a big savings or anything at that time. And I'm thinking, man, this business, I got to make it work because this is going to be my only retirement. Like, I don't have anything else. And so, of course, the world has changed drastically since then, as far as like what's possible and how you can make money. Um, However, it's still it's still something that it's still something that we have to. I don't know where I was going with that. I just lost my train of thought. I'm tired.
That's okay. Yeah, I'll pick up a little bit of the load, because I had some thoughts too, and
Yeah.
I know it generally will inspire additional ones from you, but I wanted to tell a story, and I've told this before, so if you've heard this before, it's worth repeating. It's worth hearing again. We were the very first ones to implement flat rate pricing in our market. Nobody had done that before. Callahan Roach they were the pioneers, and so we had these big thick books, and so I roll these books out, and I can't remember what my hourly rate was, but they helped me calculate it. It was a pretty big number, and because it builds in all your overhead, and it also builds in your inefficiency, right? You're not billable 40 hours a week when you're on flat rate, so so all that's built into it. And I want to say that, just for the sake of this conversation, that hourly rate was $200 an hour way back then. Way back then. I'm talking way back in the early 90s. Okay. Long time ago. A lot of you guys weren't even born yet. So, oh, man, that makes me feel good. So, I'm having a training session. I always have my training sessions on Tuesday mornings. Mondays were too busy. So, as early in the week as possible. And we're covering some calls. And I was talking, remember the guy's name? He was Stacy. He was a great guy. And I said, Stacy, tell me about that service call at the church with the blower motor. What happened? And he said the pastor there said that the price of the motor was way too high, and I don't blame him. It was.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I know that a lot of time they don't know what the thing's supposed to charge, or they don't know what the motor's supposed to a motor replacement should be, but they do know the reaction of the technician that's handing them the invoice, and
Yeah.
and they can see that. And I realized I got myself a problem. Well, I had just gone through this training, financials training, and so I was fresh on my mind. Grease board's there. I break everything down. We take everything, and I take all these guys through this, and we come up to the total. And I want to say it was like $195 an hour is what we had to make. And I said, guys, we're charging 200. You could have heard a pin drop. The guy that had called that too much said, we need to raise our price. We need to go up. But I saw the reaction of everybody. I said, wait, I didn't. I also have some markup built in the price. So that's a little bit, we're making a little bit of money, but we're not getting rich here, guys. These are fair prices. Yeah. And it changed them. And all of a sudden, I had no more price resistance on our pricing. I mean, these guys were like, it's $450. That's a good price. Sign right here. They were just like, here.
Yeah.
And that's called, by the way, that's called a paradigm shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we need as owners.
Maybe one person that was kind of hung up on that. But after that, I had already learned by the time, because I was still relatively young in business, by the time I had more employees. So it just was what it was by the time I had more employees. And so people who come into it know, charging what we need to charge, it's not a big deal for them. There's no hangups because they don't know any different. But the people, especially the old timers who are still out there turning wrenches, it's really hard for them because they know what they used to charge.
Yeah.
And now they're still charging only enough to just break even or lose money most of the time. But it's still a lot more than what they used to have to charge just because of inflation and how much everything's gone up. And even that's hard for them. So I understand, I get it. It's hard, but once I learned that when you factor in everything that it takes to operate the business, having insurance, fixing the vehicles when they break down, getting new tires on them, we're changing the oil, like understanding that the phones and the internet was all part of the overhead and that the customer pays for that. Once that clicked for me and I was in enough pain for long enough, I was like, line in the sand. I pulled my head out of the sand for one thing, drew a line in that sand, and I didn't cross it again. I'm like, we're going to charge what we have to charge. And if people don't like it, they can call someone else.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it, because I knew that if we charged any less, I knew what that produced, which was nothing.
I had a coaching call earlier today, and he had to come in and fire a couple of guys. And
that's always hard.
Yeah, it's always hard. But one of the things that led up to this is when he was on vacation, he comes back and his van had been wrecked, and so had his trailer, and it was neglect. It was something stupid. But for those of you listening, if you've got a business and you've never had an employee wreck a van or a vehicle, it's coming. Build it into your pricing.
Dude, I had so much of that happen. I mean, we had deers run into the side of our vehicles too, where it wasn't even their fault.
I saw that on who was that? That was Stephanie and David down at Anchor Heating and Cooling. That happened just this week. They posted a picture. Deer. No, it was a turkey. Had smashed out the whole front windshield. Big old turkey, I think it was. So yeah, it happened. So they're gonna wreck your vans. Equipment's gonna fall off a trailer. I had that happen. Semi truck run it over. They're going to miswire something. I had my guys miswire a 575 volt compressor, 35 horsepower. Boom, had to go buy another one. Right.
They're going to, yeah. Let me just add that they may have a nice new van to drive. They're going to wreck it. It's going to be their fault. And then you're going to give them a loaner van while theirs is getting fixed, and they're going to bitch about it.
Yes. And then
that will happen.
You are going to get sued. You're going to have a lawsuit against you. You ever been sued, Kelley? I have.
Thankfully, no.
Well, I have, and absolutely not my fault. Did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You are going to have to come in and pull a system out and put another one in. You
definitely get my fair share of that. Yeah.
You're going to have you're going to lend stuff out to your employees. They'll never return it. They'll lose stuff. They're going to lose your tools. They're going to steal from you. Somebody's going to steal from you.
Yep.
And it goes on and on and on. Where does that money come from? It's the cost of doing business. You want to minimize risk, but the reality of it is, you got to come from somewhere. Oh, I'll get it. Old school thought. Well, I'll get it from my job. Well, where does that money come from? I mean, it all comes from somewhere. If you're not covering if you're not paying if your company's not charging enough, you can't afford to do this stuff. What do you do if they ask you to step up and stand behind something? One time I was doing a walk-in cooler. I think I mentioned this. I had my big coat on, and I reached in. I hit the toggle switch with my back. I'm reaching in between the condensers, knocked the condenser off, left. The owner didn't know it. The entire meat section went bad. He had to replace. He had to throw it all out. I guess a meat or whatever it was. It was a freezer box.
Yeah.
And it thawed and went bad. And he called me back out and says, "You were just here working on the other unit, and it happened." And I looked, and I couldn't be dishonest. I wrote him a check. I had to buy all that meat.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff happens. You don't do it on purpose.
No. And that's the thing too, is anytime that happens, as long as you're priced okay, like you will have the money to write that check. But you want to feel some super stress, undercharge, and just wait, because all of those things that Pete just said will happen. Inevitably will happen. And so it's only a matter of time. So you can continue to not charge it. Oh yeah, what I was going to say, also, because you started to go down this path, but then you just kind of briefly skipped over it.
Okay.
But like when it comes to service, 50% of our days, like we're lucky if we can bill out 4 hours a day. The other 4 hours we're still paying the technician for, if you're paying an hourly rate that
Yep.
you're not being paid for. So you've got to,
Got to build that
your
in.
price has to include those extra hours for them to drive from job to job, or stop and get gas, or stop and get some lunch, or I mean, not pay them for their lunch necessarily, but you know what I mean. Like, all of that takes money,
So
and the customer, it all comes from sales. So you have to sell or you don't have a business.
your customer sales, you don't have a business, you have to advertise, you have to do this other stuff, but you don't understand, Kelley. I can't charge that much for in my market, or I won't get the job.
Yeah, I hear that too. And I also hear, so you have to really pay attention. I talked to a guy today. He's actually coming. I'll see him next month at our event. And he was, we use generalities a lot when we are talking. We'll say everyone, no one has money, or all customers,
Blanket statements. Yeah.
don't like to be sold,
No.
or
They won't pay that here.
yeah, they won't pay that. They won't pay that here. So watch your language, because your thoughts, create the language, and that language and those thoughts create behaviors. And people are feeling that on you. If you're scared to talk about the price, no matter what you're presenting, then you ought to practice saying it out loud. And so you don't flinch every time you say it. Say, would you like to go with that system, ma'am? It's only $15,000. If that makes you flinch, then start practicing saying it so you stop flinching. You have to, sometimes it sounds ridiculous, but it's not. Like, people, you are giving off an energy, a vibe, your body language. Like, 7% of communication is words. 7%, that's it. Less than 10%. The rest is tonality. The rest is physiology. It's all in how you say what you say, and your body language behind.
It's the 738 55 53. So 7% is what the words out of your mouth. 38% is your voice and tonality, and the rest is all body language.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
This is a good price. My words are 7%, but my body language is but yeah,
Or
I love that.
yeah,
I love that.
just like you said, your guy, like, yeah, that's too high.
Yeah, if you don't believe in what you're selling, you're not going to sell it. If you don't believe your price is fair, you're not going to sell it. So we got to fix that. So, but there's another piece to it, Kelley. You can't sell that in this market. In your opinion, did you ever have customers that were just bad customers?
Absolutely.
Did you ever have customers that were just awesome customers? You wish you had more like it?
Absolutely.
So are all customers the same?
No.
So why don't we treat our marketing that way? Why can't we get more targeted on our advertising and go for people who will value what we're offering? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
You darn straight. We were talking about that earlier. We call it magnetic alignment marketing, where based on what we're advertising, we're drawing a certain type of person with one end of the magnet, and we're repelling the cheap bargain hunters with the other. And you're doing this wrong, guys. Listen to this. You're doing this wrong if the majority of your marketing is product and price based. You will knock this much more off, and you get this.
And I did a lot of that. I did
I did too. I didn't know any better. Yeah, I did too.
I didn't know any better either.
So yeah, the way that you're perceived, we got to raise that value. It does matter what your wrap look like. It does matter what your uniforms are looking like. It does matter. The words that come out of your mouth are not just tonality, but it's also your vocabulary. Remember this one? Going to go to the truck and get a part and fix it. See if we can get it going, or go to my service vehicle and get the proper replacement component and restore the operation back to factory standards. I'm just riffing here, but
yeah, but you just sound professional when you say it.
Or not.
The latter sounds far more professional,
Absolutely.
So it's how you want to be perceived. Also, like I've talked about this before, because beards, I don't think I could, if I could grow a beard, but it'd be really scraggly because I'm just not
Oh,
hairy.
I'm even worse than that. Yeah.
But so I'm not, trust me, I am not like dissing beards at all, because I
Yeah.
probably couldn't grow a
We're
nice
just
one.
jealous of you, but here it comes.
I'm not jealous, but I don't see anything wrong with beards if they're nice and trimmed and kept well. But if you've got scrangly hairs going all over and it's down to your belly button, you're not going to be perceived as professional, just period. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And if you don't like it, shave your beard off and see how much your sales increase.
What was that sales guy name back from the 90s? He wrote Tom something. He talked about that.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I
Yeah, he
used
was
to
big sales guy. And
yeah,
he had an audio book that I remember listening to it. And he
let
was
me,
telling
I
the
gotta,
guy, yeah, go ahead. He was telling the guy that to get a haircut, it would help his sales. He saw people love me for my personality and everything else. And they did. He did really good. But he went in one time and he got a haircut and his sales went
Tom
up.
Hopkins.
Tom Hopkins. His sales even went up even more. Thank you. And Tom Hopkins said, and it was interesting, to the proportion that his haircut got more into the norm, proportionally his sales got higher. And so people judge you for weird things,
They
and
do.
so we, tattoos. Kelley's got tattoos. People have to,
Yeah.
I never did that because it was a childhood trauma.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it either until my business sold. You couldn't tell that I had tattoos. I had it to where anything,
Right.
I
You were
could
discreet.
still wear a short sleeve shirt because I was
Yeah.
always so concerned about what the customer would think.
Yeah.
And
You
I
didn't
know
have
that I
one in
see
the center
guys
of
in
your,
supply houses all the time that are covered in tattoos, and the
right.
businesses that they work for, they have to wear the long sleeves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a military thing too, in the Army, because when I joined the Army, everybody got tattoos. I was sitting in the tattoo parlor in outside of Fort Belvoir, Virginia, in Washington, D.C., actually. And we were sitting, and I'm watching my buddy get this big eagle, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, because I was an engineer. And, that's where they taught me heating and air, by the way. And, and he was like, Pete, get you one. And I said, no, I don't think so. But I, like I said, I had a childhood. We were kids, we were about 15 years old. And there were some guys that moved in. We were in some apartments, like I said, single mom. And these old guys, the old Harley guys, they had these tattoos, and we're like looking because they're old and faded and drooping because these guys are overweight. And if I could find this guy today, I'd give him a hug. But he said he scared us. He knew. He said, "Oh, you like that? Get you one. Yours will look just like this one day." And for that reason, he never got a tattoo. My best buddy.
Yeah.
I never got a tattoo, but it was just the same thing. It was a childhood influence that just stays with you.
Sure.
Had I not had that, I definitely would have got it tatted up because everybody did it. When I was in the Army, everybody got tattoos.
You can get them redone, after whatever, 20 years. Mine got pretty faded, my old ones, but I just
Yeah, you
I
just kind of touch them up.
covered
Yeah.
some up and I redid some of them. So
Yeah.
now they look brand new. Like I've got some tribal, like it's just crisp and clean now, where
Yeah.
it was all just faded before. So
Yeah. I always said if I did one, I'd do it up all the way, not just like, NASCAR, one thing over here and another thing down there. Just put something really cool and just like, but anyway, I'll never do it. Not at this age, at least. So you young guys, that's for you. Yeah.
You gotta try it once.
Yeah. But guys, never get a tattoo on the small of your back. That's a no.
Yeah, none of that. So
sorry.
I talked to a lot of business owners. You've talked to a lot of business owners. You made the mistake. I made the mistake. And what it really boiled down to me, one of the things also that I'll tell you is that I literally I was pricing the exact same way that the person I worked for was pricing.
Right.
So I just copied what they did. I'd been doing it for years, and I just had no idea that they weren't charging enough.
Right.
And 3 months after I left the business, they sold the business.
Well, what makes it worse, if you're like me, I was charging what they were charging too, because I didn't want to. I understood that if somebody came to me for a cheaper price, they'd leave me and go with somebody else for a cheaper price. But what I
Yeah.
didn't understand is I had zero overhead. I'm working out of my house out of the back of the station wagon. I don't even have a van yet. So the money I was making was good money. But by the time I got into a company size, it was not good money.
Right.
And so I thought it was
Right.
me. Maybe there's something wrong here.
Ooh, yeah. Let's talk about that real quick. So, as the business progresses and you start adding things to the business and you gain employees and stuff and more benefits that you offer, who pays for those benefits? Who pays for those new uniforms and that next van payment and the
The
extra
owner cuts
engine,
his salary. That's what he does.
So I made that mistake lots of times. I went to an event in New Jersey and they were, you know, throwing all this stuff at me, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to do this, oh my god, I got to do that. And I went back to my when I got back home, I started implementing, and I was just implementing, and like 4 months later, I don't know what's going on, I'm running out of money
Yeah.
and
We,
I'm
we,
stressed,
we
and so I
no,
had to
what,
step back a minute and say, wait, what did I just do here? And so I cut a bunch of stuff that I wasn't using, um, to cut my expenses back, and then raise my prices, and then got everything back to where it needed to be. But I shouldn't have went through that because I just didn't know any better. Nobody told me either. So
so yeah, just to support that, and because you've said that before, I've heard you say that before, and you probably heard me say
yeah,
this before. When we did a financials class, I had a dealer that realized the same thing. Went to class, realized, well, I got to raise my prices. Went out there and raised his prices. Only later to call me up and say, Pete, I got to drop my prices back. I can't sell anything.
yeah,
So that by
okay,
itself's not
that's a
enough.
good point too.
Yeah, yeah.
Two things is, one thing that I talk about a lot is we the things that are valuable, we tend to place no value on. So what I mean by that is, if you use a CRM, customer retention management system, and the customer gets a email and a text saying, hey, your call's been booked on Tuesday for 8 a.m. and Roger's going to be showing up to see you. That's valuable. That's value. That builds the customer experience to be a better experience. When you close that ticket out and you can email them the invoice and a link to say, hey, leave us a review, please. How did we do? That's value that we place no value on. Having a clean uniform, making sure that you have at least one clean shirt hanging behind you in the truck to where if you had to go through a crawl space on the last call, you could put on a fresher uniform. Um, that's valuable that we place no value on. Calling the customer a courtesy call before we head that way, having a tablet so it's nice and big so they can read what you're showing them and read their invoice. Being polite, taking your shoes off or putting booties on. That's all value that you're building. You're constantly building value. And we don't look at it as value. We don't look at your nicer, newer van as adding value to the service that you provide. Only thing that we look at is how much does this part cost and how long is it going to take me to replace it. That's all we connect value to when it comes to our pricing, and that's simply false. It's not true. Like the phones that your technicians have, um a lot of companies go with iPhones and iPads. There's value to that. It's all valuable, and it's not just valuable to the technicians or your company. It's extremely valuable to the customer. So you have to start understanding that there's far more value. The warranties that you give, the type of service you provide, you know, how your technicians show up. Are you letting them go to homes in ripped jeans? Well,
Yeah.
if you're not, there's value to that. Do you make sure that they don't stink? Like, will you you as an owner or a manager, will you pull someone aside and say, Pete, we got to talk about some personal hygiene, man. Like, there's value to that, to not going to a customer. There was a guy that was always in the supply house buying parts, and he drove this beat up ratty old truck, and he was always in there. He looked like he didn't wash his hair for the last 3 weeks, and he smelled. And this guy's going to customers' houses all day long. And of course, he's attracting a certain kind of customer, but that's one of the reasons why people will pay you more, because they don't want that type of service. They want a better type of service, a type of service that has name tags on the shirts, and with the technician, with the text message that goes out, or the courtesy call before you head that way, saying, hey, I'm John with Service HQ or McKay's Heating and Cooling. Like, we're coming to your house. Just want to make sure that somebody's going to be there, whatever. Like, you're just giving them a courtesy call. There's just value that's all worth money. Like, you have to convert it to a monetary dollar amount to have good people with who have manners, who care about the customer, who take care of their personal hygiene, who have training, maybe are licensed. All of these things, there's value to that. So start understanding that. And if you don't have some of those things and you need to raise your prices, well, pick like 5 of those things that I just talked about and implement them immediately. And boom, your value just went way up. And now you can feel better about charging more.
Yeah. And so
Hopefully.
one of the other things that you need to be aware of, if I may, because you're really venturing into my specialty as well. The customer experience and value building is what I love, and that's what my whole process that I teach is about. Is when your customer, if all they're given, if all they can see, all that stuff is great. You texted me, your comfort advisor is out. We're talking about the sale now, equipment sale. Comfort advisor was out there, got a nice little email, got a little video from the owner. He's excited about the potential of doing business with us. I got a preview of my comfort advisor come in, and I'm sitting down with this person, and all I have, let's say you're the comfort advisor, all I have is this equipment tonnage, BTU amount, efficiency, brand, and this price. If that's really all I've got, you're forcing me to do what I got to do and make a decision based on this. Because the other company, they got the same brand and they got the same tonnage and they got the same efficiency, but they got a better price. I got to do what I got to do. Okay. This is what's holding you back as well. So how do we get beyond that? Well, there's other things that go in. I mean, is that all that matters? There's a lot more to this. When you're putting in equipment, we do a better job. Well, that's kind of a blanket statement. We do a better job. How do you do a better job? Are you doing a structural assessment? Are you doing load calculation? Right? Do you do basic duct design if you're reusing the duct work? Do you do an existing equipment assessment and you convey the value to that? What are we reusing and what are we replacing? Are we reusing the old drain pan system, or are we putting in a new? Are we doing the line set? Are we putting in a new? What about the electrical? Are we upgrading certain things? What about the size of the duct? Do we have to enlarge it? Is the existing system? Look at the application. Is the existing system that maybe used R22 once upon a time or what have you? Now we're using new refrigerants at a new static pressure. Now it needs different air distribution. Is your competition just going to kind of try to cram that old system and misapply that? Or you consider an application? And can you convey that? Are you doing a customer assessment? Are you looking at accessories that, by the way, is the rest of a system that actually resolve all these customer issues like allergies or sensitive to dust or things like this? Elderly, they're sensitive to temperatures or humidity, there's dry skin, or all these different variables, right? What about the materials used? Are we using the cheapest possible? Or are you trusting that contractor to just reuse what's there and just kind of patch that stuff back together, or step in and make it right? What about the craftsmanship? What about the level of competency, the amount of money that you're paying at high end tech versus to take his time and do it right versus your competition that's paying cheaper to get in there and knock it out and be gone because they're focused on equipment and price. You got to be focused on educating your customers on the entire package. And we just talked about some of these. It's called a sales process that's reverse engineered to deliver it, to educate and to raise true value. Guys, you come in with that. Now there's a percentage. Again, this is what I was talking about, target.
Always. Yeah.
Knowing who your customer needs to be, right? There's low end customers. They're going to wishful think themselves, because I've been there. I've been in that market. I don't want to know the truth. Don't mess up my fantasy that the prices that I'm getting a good deal here. There are those, but the experienced customer, the ones that have been around a while, been burned a while, they want it done right. Everybody wants to save money, but not at the expense of cutting corners.
Yeah.
So a process that will communicate that is going to raise your value as well. Just saying. Woo! We on fire tonight, Kelley. Good stuff. So yeah, we got to charge, got to make more. It's a head game. We got to go through the work, got to get that paradigm shift. I used to see things this way, sat through this class. Had a guy on one of our mastermind groups post today. My guy never sold IQ. He couldn't do it. We went in, gave him a true deep class, and he really got it. And he understood that it really worked. And he sold like 20 the next week. It's up here.
Yeah. It's all in your mind. Yeah. There's always going to be somebody else in your market who is more than you. Some guys or some people will recognize this early in the game that, hey, I've lost some bids and I was actually $2,000 cheaper than the people that than the company who won the job. And that's a good lesson. Like, if I wish I could have learned that so much earlier. I was always under the assumption that I just came in too high, even though I was already too low anytime I lost a job. But that's not reality. Reality is somebody felt a lot safer going with somebody else than they did with me, or they were educated more. They had better options, and maybe they wanted those accessories, or they wanted to not have to worry about any repairs for the next 10 years on labor, also not just on parts. So all of these things build value in what you're selling. Your warranties, your risk reversal. Risk reversal is a huge thing that is powerful in selling. So how are you going to reverse the risk of the customer? Because it is a big investment. It could be the third largest investment they make. Could be next to a home or a car and maybe a college education. Maybe the fourth largest investment. I don't know. It's a pretty big investment when you got to replace a heating air conditioning system if you're going to go with a really nice system. So it's something to consider. I think customers have a right to, to feel like they're making the right decision, that they're protected. And I think they should be leery or cautious, because there are a lot of other companies out there who don't do what some of the guys who watch who are watching this do. And I always share that with people. I'm like, you have to believe so much in one of the ways that makes it easier to believe in yourself is to look at what's happening in your market. There are people out there who are ripping people off. Truly. They're not picking up their phone after they get the taillight special, the taillight warranty. Once the taillights are gone, they're never answering the phone again because they've already collected the money.
Yeah.
So, so you have to pay attention to what's happening in your market. And, I looked at it as, when I started understanding this and believing in what we did, because I knew customers were safe with me. Like, I knew, we're going to take care of you. Right. And I will tear your system out and give you all your money back if that's what it takes to make you happy. If we can't make you happy, but we are going to move heaven and earth to make it right. And so when you believe in that, and you're just going to do that because you're going to do the right thing anyways. So if you're going to do the right thing, well then, and that other people are preying on some of these customers, then it's almost your duty.
Yeah.
To do your best to convince them to make the right decision.
And they got to be for the right reasons. And I'm going to open up a can of worms here, but hear me out on this one. We were talking before about, that mindset of not giving a F what anybody thinks. You got to do what you go to do, and how that's in one way that's good. And we do want to do what we got to do and not let people influence us. But on the other hand, we don't want to detach and be disconnected from what people think, because sometimes what people think matters. But when I hear business owners say, well, my customers here want this, my customers here love this, you be careful of your customers who love you for the wrong reasons. I'm going to give you an example. We do an exercise in our program where we go through your Google reviews, and we go through them in a manual method, and we extract the information. And this is a telltale sign. Go look at yours, read them, and write down every time they write down that you were a good price, or you were a fair price, or you're something related to price. And every time they write down that you were honest, that the other company wanted to charge so much more, when you see both of those present, you're too cheap. Your customer assumes that because you're a lesser price, you're honest, and the other company, the bigger company, was ripping them off, and your underprice created a misconception in their mind that other company was too cheap. And the reality, it was too expensive, and trying to rip them off because, they could, if you could do it for that price, they could do it for that price. They were ripping you off, trying to rip them off, but you're honest. Right. And that's not the truth. Raise your prices. These are the kind of things that we have to self-assess and realize we got to be strong and do these things for the right reason. Not that we don't care what people think. It's just that we're right. And
there's also,
make people love you for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. But go ahead.
You are 100% right. 100% right. Like if all your people are saying, and guess what? Those people who are talking about how fair you are with your prices and how cheap you were, and you got this done, he's wonderful and didn't rip me off, that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? They're passing your name on to friends and family who also price.
And believe me, so they know exactly what that other customer paid. They share those numbers. So
it compounds, so but you're there's a place, in my opinion, this is sheerly my observation, is that you're as you're growing your business, you're in between a rock and a hard place with your pricing sometimes, because there are some big companies that can charge less than you and all day long and make bank at the end of the year. And that's because their volume is so much higher than yours. So in order for you to operate at your little volume, your lesser amount of service calls ran, lesser amount of installs performed, you have to charge like they're paying for the same things you are. And as far as overhead goes, like they still have phone lines that they got to pay for, they got internet, and it's all relative to the size of revenue that you're at. That's why overhead it can vary drastically between companies. But if you're up to date on things, and you are using a CRM, you have tablets, like you've got a good brand, like all of that costs money. And so if you're up to date with all those things, then your cost is equal to theirs in terms of percentages to revenue, most likely relatively close. So relatively close.
Yeah.
So you get what I'm saying? Like, so what I'm saying is that in order for you to still make money and have some profit and pay for all the expenses that you have based on your smaller amount of revenue, oftentimes you have to charge more. And not only because of that, because they are still paying for things that you don't have yet, like a shop, for instance, or better benefits, so they attract better employees. Like you don't have those things, so you have to kind of act as if you want those things, you kind of have to act as if you can gradually raise your prices over time as you become more and more comfortable with it. I wouldn't tell somebody to go from, I don't know, I would actually, but if you're $110 an hour, you probably need to be $350 an hour minimum. and maybe higher. So just depends on where you're at and what your needs are. And it really doesn't matter what other people are doing or what they're charging. What matters is what you have to make in order to grow your business, to have the funds.
Yeah, it
And
is.
there's unexpected expenses that come up, like you said, like somebody wrecks the van or something or get sued.
Yeah. So it's got to be looked at as a collective. Um, if your prices go up, your value, your perceived value has to go up, and your ability to sell has to go up, and your capacity needs to go up, which is what I think the word that was escaping you. You know, how many billable hours do your guys have? What are they at full capacity or their partial capacity? How do we increase that capacity? Keep everybody billable, right? Install
Yep.
team, changing out, service guys running their thing, maintenance guys. So trying to maintain that capacity, that's an art. And so all this stuff kind of has to come up together. And that's why if you take your eye off of one ball, it can kind of throw everything out of whack. It's a
Yeah.
balancing act, right? But you can do it. You can do it. But
What I'm trying to say is, like, you've got people like Amazon and, and Aldi's who are low margin businesses.
high volume, low margin, and
That,
easy
yeah,
to
high
scale.
volume, low margin.
Easy to scale, right?
But in the beginning, the many years, they lost money. And you, as a small business owners with not with that does not have a bunch of angel investors, or you can't acquire money or collect money, you can't afford to do that until you get big to where you have the amount of volume.
Right.
There was a local heating and air company here that they're like a 30-40-year-old business. And the rumor was that every new construction home that they did, because they did a lot of them, they made $200 off of. But they did like
But
200 a year.
yeah.
And so when you add that up, yeah, they might be able to make that work because they, as a percentage to the rest of the business, they did. I still don't think that was smart at all. I'm just saying, if you can do the volume, you don't need the margins to make a lot of profit dollars.
Right.
So, but if you're smaller, you literally cannot do enough work to lower your prices. They just have to be kind of where they are.
It's very important to separate that in your mind. Things like Amazon and things that are scalable, they can just they can just sell. But you can't scale beyond your labor capacity.
Right.
So you got to approach that a little bit differently, right? Until you've got your processes so balanced and your technicians have their processes they follow, and all your team is working, and now you've got something that you can actually scale because you're not having to have your hand in every little thing. You can actually pull back and allow it to follow the system that you've implemented. But creating that system is something that doesn't come to mind because I'm a service technician. I know what to do. And I'm assuming that the next service tech that I hired, because he had 10 years of experience, knows to do the same things. And guess what? He doesn't do it the same way that you do. In fact, he may not have the same customer experience that you do. And all that building that you've done can just be, he can just be losing customers left and right, or certainly, beginning to lose them. And that's why, organization, everything else, it all has to come together. It all has to come. This is a system. And so if you're out there fighting this on your own, stop beating yourself to death. Come in, get a little bit of help. Join the group, join Kelley, join myself. Come in and get a little bit of help, but get your prices right and take care of yourself.
Yeah, you have to. This is the mentality that we've talked about kind of throughout this whole conversation has been, for some reason, a lot of people who do work for successful businesses, who are doing well, and they were making really good money. Then they chose to go out on their own and take this leap, this entrepreneurial leap. And they felt in some manner that they were ripping customers off. And so now when they go out and they're on this mission to be a savior for the customers, I'm going to save these customers from these wicked companies.
Yep.
And with that mentality, it's because you had were you looking at the profit and loss statement? Were they even actually making money from what they charged the company you left?
That's even worse.
How much money were they making? I mean, how much risk were they taking? Does the owner not deserve to make some good money when he's taking all this risks every day? Like there's no there's no logic there when you really break it down. But for some reason, people all the time, right out of the gates, I am going to save this. I'm going to save my
Yeah.
community.
Oh, my
And
boss would want to
it
sell you
goes
a new
back to,
system. I'm going to save you money. Yeah.
yeah, it goes back to, you have to put, if you, the more successful you are, the more people you'll be able to help, period.
I like that.
And as long as you continue to rob yourself of success because you want to save your customers instead,
Yeah.
who will call somebody else if you can't get to them. If you were in a wreck tomorrow, they're going to call a different company and buy a maintenance contract from them and replace their equipment with that company. Um, it, like, but yet you would break your back for them.
Sure.
You have to understand, you have to put on your oxygen mask first. That's where that comes from before you
Yeah.
can save other people.
Yeah.
So
It's
you'll be able
universal
to
truth.
save a lot less people if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, i.e., get paid so you can sustain the business.
Yeah.
You know,
You,
yeah,
to the extent that you help, you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. And so it's
exactly.
directly proportional. It's universal truth. It happens in health. You know, it happens in wealth. It happens in energy. It happens in everything. And I love what you brought out. Kelley, we have crossed over the 1 hour mark recording. Yep. And add that to the 1 hour before recording. We put quite a night together, haven't we?
Yeah, I need to.
We didn't put you to bed. But your energy picked up. You did really good. And bro, the lights started coming on. I love what you were sharing. Good stuff. Good stuff. And guys, if you appreciate this, you know, reach out to Kelley for more on that financial stuff. He's really good on the financial stuff. And he's got programs in there that'll help you. My strength is on building that value and getting them to pay that price. And so I think, well, he is too, but you know, between the two, hopefully we can get you there. Right. And yeah, pricing, you got to get paid.
All you need.
Yeah, got to get paid. Go ahead. What was that mindset?
Oh, mindset shift. That's all you need. Just
mindset shift. Yeah. We did a program called that once. I love it. It's a combination between, we call it the mind shift. Mindset and then the paradigm shift, the mind shift. But
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we all need that. We all have baggage. Let's clear the clutter, get healthy in our thinking, get our business healthy, and take care of our families, take care of ourselves, and take care of our customers, because all boats float on a rising tide. So well, thank you, Kelley. I appreciate you taking the lead on this tonight. You great,
always fun.
Great stuff. And for those of you listening, follow the podcast. Kelley's got a playlist in his YouTube channel that lists all of these. Pete has one over on his YouTube channel that has all of these, and hopefully you can enjoy both of those. And so listen for the next one right here where you found this one, and we'll see you on the next one. Sound good?
See you guys. See you, Pete.
Bye-bye.